Top story, the deadline for Zimbabwean President Robert Mugabe to step down has now expired. The embattled leader has not resigned. Following the expiry of the resignation deadline, ZANU-PF has initiated impeachment proceedings against Mugabe. Party Chief Whip Lovemore Matuke has submitted an impeachment motion in the parliament, which will be debated tomorrow. Yesterday, ZANU-PF voted to remove Mugabe as its leader. It also resolved to expel his wife, who leads the party's Women's League, for life. Former Vice President Emmerson Mnangagwa was also appointed his successor.
There has to be formal processes, either his own resignation or any impeachment. So today's process does not necessarily translate to removing him from being head of state and being the president of the country. There is a legal process because he is recognized in the constitution. So what will be required is a constitutional process to terminate his presidency, which will either be a vote of no confidence in the form of an impeachment, or he himself for resigning, or a declaration in terms of the constitution that is no longer fit and capable to run the country, which is allowed in terms of the constitution.
Now let's take a look at what the options are if Mugabe does not resign. Parliament meets on Tuesday. National Assembly and Senate can start proceedings to remove President by passing a simple majority vote against Mugabe. Once votes are passed, the two chambers must appoint a joint committee to investigate removing the president. After commission's nod, the president can be removed if both houses back it with two-thirds majority. Forcing Mugabe out, the military might consider putting pressure on the embattled president to vacate office. This will be a serious test of pro- and anti-Mugabe forces in the military.
There have not been any further developments other than what we saw yesterday, culminating in the speech that was given by the president, Comrade Robert Mugabe. So currently, we are still going through the statement that was given by the president, and equally looking at the issues that we raised, and it is from there that we'll take it up according to the discussions that took place yesterday. And he also made an admission of the concerns that have been raised by the party, which by admitting, we hope that he understands the implications thereof as given by the Central Committee that said yesterday.
Meanwhile, the leader of Zimbabwe's war veterans, Chris Mutsavangwa, has said that he would initiate court action to legalize the military action against President Robert Mugabe after the army seized power on Wednesday.
The president himself yesterday, in his winding and dawdling statement about, trying to remain in office, he actually admitted that the army did the correct thing because I had become derelict of my duty. He admitted. All of you, you saw it. You heard it for yourself. And we have gone to the court today. We are hoping that the case is registered to say that Mugabe, he was derelict of his executive duty, forcing the head of the army to intervene to arrest the criminals. And the army is now done its job. And the people of Zimbabwe on Saturday took off from where the army had left. And this is why we are also calling on the people of Zimbabwe to say he is dragging his feet a little bit longer than is due. So we want to make sure that he leaves now. We want to see his back now. Mugabe, your rule is over. The emperor has no clothes.
Mugabe last night stunned the nation by refusing to resign during a late-night address. Last night, in a televised speech, he pledged to preside over a ZANU-PF Congress in December, even though the ruling party had removed him as its leader hours earlier. Mugabe has run the country since the end of its war for independence in 1980. But Mugabe read a long written speech and announced that he is staying on. He did acknowledge the protests, but said that Zimbabweans need to stay united and focus. He also had a word of advice for his party that they should stick to the constitution of ZANU-PF.
In a few weeks from now, I will preside over its processes, which must not be prepossessed by any acts calculated to undermine it or to compromise the outcomes in the eyes of the public. As I conclude this address, I am aware that many developments have occurred in the party or have been championed and done by individuals in the name of the party. Today's meeting with the command element has underscored the need for us to collectively start processes that return our nation to normalcy, so all our people can go about their business unhindered in an environment of perfect peace and security, assured that law and order obtain and prevail as before, and endure well into the future. To our commanders are the well-founded fears that the lack of unity and commonness of purpose in both party and government was translating into perceptions of inattentiveness to the economy. Open public spurts between high-ranking officials in the party and government, exacerbated by multiple conflicting messages from both the party and government, made the criticisms leveled against us inescapable. We must learn to forgive and resolve contradictions, real or perceived, in a comradely Zimbabwean spirit. I am confident that from tonight, our whole nation at all levels gets refocused as we put shoulder to the wheel amidst the promising agricultural season already upon us.
Crowds who gathered in bars and cafes in Harare to watch the address, which was widely expected would end the 93-year-old's reign as president, were left stunned and disconsolate. Zimbabweans say they feel profoundly disappointed that longtime President Robert Mugabe is resisting pressure to step aside.
I'm expecting him to resign, hang up his shoes and say, I've given up as the president of Zimbabwe.
We have marched for the country, but we just want him to go. We are very disappointed, and we just hope for the best, that he understands that the world wants to change, the country and the world wants to change.
He just needs to go and leave us to be and have a better Zimbabwe. Please, can you just step down? We're hoping for, like we went for the march yesterday, to show him that we don't want him anymore as our president, wants a better, like something new, a fresh start for our kids to have a better Zimbabwe.
Mugabe last night stunned the nation by refusing to resign during a late-night address to the nation. In a televised speech, he pledged to preside over a ZANU-PF Congress in December, even though the ruling party had removed him as its leader hours earlier. Mugabe has run the country since the end of its war for independence in 1980. But Mugabe read a long written speech and announced that he is staying on. He did acknowledge the protests, but said that Zimbabweans need to stay united and focus. He also had a word of advice for the party that they should stick to the constitution of ZANU-PF. Well, we do know that 12 p.m. deadline has since been surpassed, and President Robert Mugabe has not stepped down or resigned as yet. We do know that ZANU-PF has now instituted impeachment processes, and a meeting is set to take place in Parliament tomorrow with regards to the current situation in Zimbabwe. We've seen protests take place. There was wide speculation that Robert Mugabe would step down, but he has not. We continue to engage with various people on this topic. of President Robert Mugabe. Last night, during a speech, he stated that he will be sitting and heading a ZANU-PF Congress that will be taking place in December, stating that he will be heading that Congress, even though ZANU-PF has removed him as the president of the party. There's also been talk around the First Lady and her removal as the women's leader. But let's get further comment coming through this afternoon with regards to the current situation in Zimbabwe. For that, we are joined by PDP provincial spokesperson Lovemore Chukucha, joins us on the phone line. Good afternoon to you, and thank you for joining us here on ANN7. That 12 p.m. or midday deadline has now surpassed, and Robert Mugabe has not stepped down as the president of Zimbabwe. What happens now?
Good day, the whole nation, the viewers that are watching right now. Yes, the anticipated time that they have actually given him to resign has actually passed, and it's been so obvious with what happened yesterday that the world have seen how stubborn Mugabe is, and he's trying to play around with the ZANU-PF constitution and the constitution of the nation. He knows what is happening, and he's got good advisors that are giving him those advices and try to, perhaps he's delaying for another hidden reasons, because you cannot trust what's happening in Zimbabwe and who is supporting who. But he eventually gonna resign. There is no way he's gonna go, and legal processes will take him down. Constitutionally, he has failed to uphold, to hold his office. So there is no way he's going to run away. And who is he going to lead if he's not going to be the head of his own party, ZANU-PF? So it's just buying time. People should not be alarmed, because for 37 years, this guy has been fooling his own people that he's only the messiah for Zimbabwe. So he still thinks like that. So it will be very difficult to go down this way. He will try to hold on to the power until maybe it goes to the grave. But the most thing why he's clinging to the power is because of most of the wealth that is created through corruption. So he's trying to defend his things, and so that his children also grew up with something at hand. So that's why he's doing this.
ZANU-PF has mentioned that they will now continue with the impeachment process in Parliament tomorrow. Do you think that the impeachment will be successful? What are your expectations with regards to this?
Yes, impeachment is constitutional, and it has to happen. But I just want to shed a little bit light on the issue of impeachment. Remember, the people of Zimbabwe took to the street, and they were in solidarity with the army for the step that they have taken. They've given a chance to the people of Zimbabwe to exercise their democracy and protest peacefully. But I'm so disappointed with ZANU-PF cadres, especially Patrick Chinamasa. He uttered a very rubbish statement yesterday that they have the majority in the parliament and they can impeach him without the need of other opposition parties. And these guys are getting ahead of themselves, because they are trying to show us that they are still the same ZANU-PF who are power hungry and who are supporting who are always after the positions and the cake of the nation. So that statement really showed us that they don't care about the people of Zimbabwe. They only care about their own personal positions. And so they want to use the people of Zimbabwe for their personal benefits, because he talked about ZANU-PF. It's about ZANU-PF. If I ask a question, did you ever see any person who was wearing a regalia calling ZANU-PF on the street? That's where people of Zimbabwe that converged for a common purpose. So if they want to take out Mugabe, the opposition must also be included, so that they can have a two-thirds majority. And if they have to say that it's all about ZANU-PF, why are they including the nation of Zimbabwe to protest for them? So that's rubbish.
All right, thank you very much, spokesperson, for your time this afternoon. We do appreciate you sharing your views with us. That was Zimbabwe People's Democratic Party provincial spokesperson Lovemore Chukucha joining us on the phone line, just talking us through the current situation in Zimbabwe. Moving on, an early setback for the application to have former National Director of Public Prosecutions Nhlanhla Masana reinstated. The North Gauteng High Court has dismissed with cost Masana's application for late filing of his answering affidavit. In his affidavit, Masana claimed that President Jacob Zuma had lied about how he had left the National Prosecuting Authority. Corruption Watch, Freedom Under Law and Council for the Advancement of the South African Constitution brought the court application. The applicants are seeking an order declaring Masana's removal from his post in 2015 invalid. Masana had reportedly accepted a 17 million rand golden handshake from President Jacob Zuma. This was after Zuma abandoned an inquiry into Masana's fitness to hold office at the 11th hour.
Saw the president's answering affidavit in 2016, and that's in February. In January and March of 2016, he meets with the applicants to assist them in the Rule 30 because he has knowledge of the correspondence that's missing. My Lord, for two reasons. Again, the first reason is because he understood that it was not yet time in the proceedings for an answering affidavit to be filed, because the Rule 30 would be underway and there would be a further supplementary founding affidavit, and only thereafter would there be answering affidavits. So he understood that until the resolution of that process had taken place, that it would not be the opportune time or the appropriate time to file his answering affidavit. The second reason, he was unaware of the progress of the matters during the course of 2016. Of course, we can criticize him for not proactively trying to establish the progress of the matters. But given that he was not opposing the relief and was not, therefore, in the minds of the applicants as one of the active opposing respondent parties, he was unaware. He wasn't served with any papers other than the founding affidavit and Corruption Watch Full. In the CASAC matter, he never received any papers until the 6th of April this year. And within a week, on the 12th of April, he had filed his answering affidavit in that matter as well. So, yes, he is aware that the matter exists. He is aware in February of 2016 that the President's version differs from his own recollection of events and that he would like to assist the court by providing his own version on oath. But he spends 2016 assisting the applicants in the Rule 30 to get all the documentation before the court. And then when he becomes aware that the matter is now proceeding towards set down, and which is when he receives the heads of argument in the Corruption Watch Full case, and when he becomes aware of the full extent of the CASAC application, when he finally receives those papers for the first time in April, within a week of that date, he filed his affidavit.
The party who applies for condonation for the late filing of a document usually does so only in his or her own interest. And those are usually the only interests in favor of the condonation.
Yes.
This case is different. The evidence placed before the court by Mr. Nkasana goes to the heart of one of the issues in the case. The President says in a one-on-one conversation between himself and Mr. Nkasana requested to allow him to vacate. The only two people who would have personal knowledge of that conversation, if there was one, would be the President and Mr. Nkasana.